Analytical psychology and family systems, Neo-Jungian practice to help families find flow, and the Case of Tammy. And I'm your professor. I'm giving you this case. Just a little bit what is this in the background? We're going to talk a little bit about, I always conceptualize problems as multi-generational. So this is up here on the top corners here are examples of genograms. I'm always looking at things kind of multi-generationally and how the family systems work. And individually, these inner symbols here are mystical symbols because I can use a Jungian approach. So that's what that is. So let's go here. The case presentation, the expectations of as our container. Well, I want to create a team of Avengers here, a container where we feel safe. And you can present your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities and your strength, as Brene Brown says. Your vulnerability is your strength. And as a therapist, that's yourself as your main tool there. A formal case presentation requires a rigid structure to safely hold complex psychological material. We will map Tammy's therapeutic journey across these standard clinical milestones. So just remember that when you start presenting a case, you're going to give us the biographical data. So this is a family. There's Tammy, who's the 16-year-old daughter. There's the father, Mike, which I'll talk about, who is a minister, a really nice guy. And he's Tammy's father. He has a lot of repressed sexuality as a minister, but that's a little biographical data about him. The wife is Sally, and she's a minister's wife. Now, this case, you want to expand. I've seen this case maybe 100 times in my career. And sometimes it's a mayor of a small town or a head of a school district in the town or some type of a position like a minister or the chief of police or the sheriff or things like that. They have children who have problems too, but they have this real worry about being judged. And I have had the same thing as a therapist when I was raising my kids, when they're 3, 5, and 7, and we'd be in the grocery store, and one of my daughter, who was 3 at the time, would start having a tantrum. I want a toy, and some of my clients would be there in the small town and say, "Oh, and you're here giving us advice?" Things like that. I felt that feeling, so I have a lot of empathy for the dad. I definitely have empathy for the daughter. We'll go into that, but that's a little biographical data. The nature of the referral. The father comes in and he's the referral source, and he has all this anxiety because he believes his daughter, she's starting at 16, she's interested in guys, he's afraid she's going to get pregnant and it's going to ruin his reputation and what are people going to think. He has a lot of persona issues when he comes in, and he wants me to basically almost exactly, he says, "I want you to fix my daughter so she doesn't get pregnant," that kind of thing. And I had to soothe his anxiety and watch out. And then we had a family session. We'll go through all the stages here. What is the presenting problem? He feels his daughter is acting out. And there's some things that she does and that are worrisome for him. Maybe she's supposed to be home at midnight. She didn't come home till 2 in the morning. Things like that, which is erasing the tension and the anxiety, which Murray Bowen, a multi-generational family therapy, really discusses. That can be passed down for generations. I, for instance, have had somebody 15 years ago, a young Jewish man, who did his dissertation on grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. And that had never met their parents. And he did all the psychological test and basically showed that those issues can be passed down in generations, even if you have never met the people, that are people that have experienced in their history slavery or Jim Crow laws or all kinds of things in the past. Those social, cultural, family pressures can get passed down to generations, even that have never met those people that had that original problem. So I'm conceptualizing right from the beginning the problem on a deeper, more collective, unconscious level. The sequence of therapy you want to go over. It's my first session with them. Or I've seen them for 4 years and this is how it turned out. Whatever the sequence is, but I want you to learn about the beginning, the middle, and the end, and how to look at that in various different ways. I look at it from a frame of alchemy, which you'll see at the bottom of these slides as we go along. There'll be the the abedo, there'll be different stages. You start off with the negredo, that's the dark, and when everybody's depressed and there's all these problems and everything. And then you go to the whitening, which is where you start to get a little insight. They start to build a safe container. Then you get to the yellowing, which is where stuff really starts to move and there's changes. And then you finally get to the reddening. That's a kind of a stage, a Jungian alchemical sequence of stages in the therapy of some, and also in somebody's individuation. Then we're going to talk about diagnosis in DSM-5. You want to think about maybe there's no diagnosis where I work. I'm dealing with 5-year-olds, and this is a prevention program. We're trying to keep them from having a diagnosis, which is a lot of times what we do. That's basically in Tammy, as we go through the conceptualization, supervision, we might say, this Tammy is a baby borderline. In other words, she's 16, so her personality hasn't really formed yet. So what I do, I wanted to see your faces in this. What I do when I see the personality as visualize it as a crystal at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's a crystal that's in solution. Anybody ever made rock candy? Rock candy is where you put a bunch of sugar in water and you stir it all up and the sugar dissolves and you heat it up and you put this very thin thread in the water with the sugar and it starts to form a crystal. So Tammy in this, she's on the borderline spectrum in Kernberg's analysis, which I'll go into, but she is not a borderline personality disorder. It's a spectrum. But if gone untreated, if she didn't get treatment at 16, by 25, she would have borderline personality because it would crystallize into that thing. So when you're working with 16 to 25-year-olds, you're working hard to keep the personality in solution so it doesn't form a pathological state. It doesn't, by 25, our brain and our personality are really stabilized by then. So from 16 to 25, we get a second chance. Now, we also get that in childhood, 0 to 5. In Monterey County, we have a whole program that is 0 to 5 because in Monterey County, our public hospital is Natividad Medical Center, and 1 out of 3 kids born at Natividad Medical Center is born with drugs on board. So we developed a program called McStart, and a lot of 16 to 25-year-olds have babies and they really don't know how, and they use a lot of drugs. So it turns out that was a lot of our clients would also be getting help from the McStart program. They use a treatment program called PCIT, which is therapy. In parent-child interactive therapy, the therapist isn't even in the room. It's the main caregiver, usually the mother, and the baby or the child. And the mother has a little bud in her ear, and the therapist is outside watching through a one-way mirror and coaching the mother on how to bond with the baby. Because you have the baby born on drugs, the mother had drugs on board, and they're both going through withdrawal, and you're working with that. That's a evidence-based treatment and it has really good success. So you want to know what you're dealing with, who the problem is. And are you the baby's therapist? Are you the mom's therapist in this situation? That's your theoretical formulation. And you'll see how I do that. And then the prognosis, we don't talk enough about prognosis. What is the prognosis for a case when it comes in? In the case I'm going to give, if the dad had not really worked on himself, he had basically 2 years of his own Jungian analysis to work on his issues. That was what really helped him deal with his daughter. If he had not done that, the prognosis would have been way worse. And so many times when I supervise people that are working in elementary schools, like Sally, let's say she's my intern, I give her 12 cases at the beginning of the school year. And I say, Sally, every month I want you to call the parents. They've signed a permission slip. I want you to call them and check in with them on how these cases are doing. At the end of the school year, 9 months later, she says, oh, only 6 of them I only got a hold of, they never called me back. That's very common. So in a school-based program, the reason why we have school-based programs are for those kids that their parents are never going to bring them in. So many times those people say, if I could only get the parents in. Well, this is lucky for me that I'm presenting you a case where the dad and the family was really involved, which made it would have not turned out the same if it wasn't really involved, if the whole family, including the father, was really involved in this. Practicum tip, always list a minimum of 3 questions and issues for your audience to think about during your presentation. So I want you to think about, I would like you to hear what I want you to think about going into this is, what do you think me, Dr. Lippincott, what do you think Brian's countertransference was in this case? What do you think his transference, what are my issues or what was triggered in me about the dad, about the mom, about the daughter, about the situation that happened? What do you think my countertransference was? How would you, the daughter is really being scapegoated in this case. What do you think she projects on me as the therapist when she first comes in? And I'll tell you about that, but what do you think that, what would you feel she projects on me kind of being dragged into therapy as a problem of the whole family when actually the problem is a family problem? And I try really hard to define it as a family problem. And we're not going to go into it in depth, but the mother was really dominated by the father, and really in the process of the family therapy started to stand up to him, which really helped the daughter in the long run. How do you think that process worked systemically, and what were the issues involved in that? Those are the questions I want you to think about. So the intake, step 1, identifying the father's worry and projection. So what's the father going through? He comes in first. Mike, he's a pastor in his 40s, has a daughter, Tammy. The presenting issue was the father wants to fix his daughter, fearing she might be sexually active and ruin his standing in the community. Now, I was doing groups in the high school there that she went to, and I saw how all the people dressed, how the kids dressed, and she wasn't dressed or differently than any other. He wasn't acting any differently. She was, to me, looked like a normal kid, but the dad was picking up on all these things that were really worrying him. Now, later on in the work with him, I was able to determine it was really his repressed sexuality. He was having all these visions and lustful feelings that he couldn't handle about the women in the congregation, and that was being stuffed down by him, and he was projecting that onto his daughter. That's what you see in this little picture. When we project onto somebody, we point what's inside the darkness inside of us gets projected onto them. So that's him projecting onto his daughter. Now, that happens in every family. Now, the key to family therapy is projective identification. When you project something like that, the daughter internalizes it. She identifies with it. So she starts to act out the father's sexuality, which you'll see. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like the Electra complex with the Oedipus complex when you think about it. Practicum tip: separate the referral source's projection from the client's actual presenting problem. The question you have in this case, I conceptualize this case generally as the whole family, although I'm working with individuals along the way, which there was if later on, we don't have time right now, but I have a whole chapter in my book about informed consent, because that can be complex. But in a small town, you have to sometimes do family therapy, couples therapy, individual therapy, because there's nobody else that can really do it, and because of the cost would be prohibitive. Now, in your practicums, it might be, Jen, you're seeing the daughter. Brian, you're seeing the father. Somebody, Laura, you're seeing the family as a whole. Or maybe we're all 3 therapists, including me as the supervisor, are going to the family sessions to try to contain that. Because in a community setting, the clients aren't paying out of their pocket, so that you can do things a little bit differently. That we call that bifurcating the case. But in this particular situation, I couldn't bifurcate the case because they wouldn't. And also, you want to think about the burden. That would mean the family would have to go to 4 sessions. How would they do that? Now, this was a well-to-do family. They were doing, so that wasn't as much of an issue, but that it's an issue to everybody. Skip to the next. So, meeting with the family. The first step is, okay, Mike, we have to discuss all that. Mike, when he first came in, he says, literally, I'm a pastor in a church here in town. I have a wonderful family with a wife who loves me and a daughter who I'm worried about. What kind of things do you enjoy about being a pastor? I'm trying to get him to talk about the positive in the beginning. Of course, I like bringing people to the Lord, and I really like helping people solve their problems in their life. I like being a guiding spirit in the life and help them on their journey. And I say, I feel the same way as a therapist. It seems like we have some things in common. And then he says, I have a goal I need to accomplish. I believe my daughter is going down the wrong road. I look deeply into his eyes, and he says, she's becoming sexually active, and I need to stop that. That is my goal as a father. How can we get the whole family to come in so we can talk about it? There's no way we can come in and talk together at this problem. My wife will freak out. So my inner self was saying, as a therapist at that point, that we might need to explore the worry and have him focus on himself. So this father had 2 years of analysis, but first we analyzed the family. So you see here is the mom caught in between the father and the daughter. It's a triangle that we'll talk about from a lot of different theories. And this is the family cycle. They're in a vicious cycle of blame and projection back and forth, with the mom caught in the middle. So in the first session, the family's physical distancing mirrored their emotional chasm. Mike exhibited contempt. Sally's mother in her 30s showed calm, but conducted herself with charm, and Tammy huddled in fear. You can see Tammy huddling in fear. So what we're assessing here is this was from structural family therapy, Salvador Minuchin, and it's called the circumplex model. So if we look at this family here, just even the picture that I have here, see we have two scales here. How much cohesion there is in the family and how much flexibility they have. So let's just go through this. It's helpful for you to think of every family this way. Think of your own family maybe while you're thinking about this. If you have low cohesion but high flexibility, that's like a really laissez-faire parenting style. You have no cohesion, but you have a lot of flexibility. The kids are basically running wild. That's what we call chaotically disengaged. Now we have low cohesion, but we have a little bit less, we have a little bit of structure. That's flexibly disengaged. Then we have low on flexibility. We're starting to get lower. We're structurally disengaged. And finally, we're rigidly disengaged. Rigidly disengaged has the worst outcome. That's where you get a lot of juvenile delinquency. They're just, you have to do it my way or the highway or you're out of here at 16. I'm not putting up with this stuff. That's what you see in there. You see here, if you go way over here, you have high cohesion. You're really, the family's enmeshed. They can't think. If dad's a Republican, everybody has to be a Republican. They're chaotically enmeshed. So there's no flexibility. They're high on flexibility. No, they're letting them run wild, but they control the mental thing. They're enmeshed with each other. Their cohesion is high. Then you get flexibly enmeshed. Then you get structurally enmeshed. And then you get rigidly enmeshed. And you can see you have rigidly connected. This is if you're low on flexibility. You can read these and look at these. But where you want to be is here in this flexibly connected structure. So you want the parents to be the parents and the kids to be the kids, but you don't want to be so rigid about it that nobody can move, that they need to have some individuality. Now, some of the techniques that you would use in this would be circular questioning, which I'll go into. The circumplex model has been used for the last 30 years. The primary emphasis is placed on exploring the intricate dynamics of family interactions to gain a deeper understanding of the family structure and organization. So you're looking at the family as a system. Symptoms and presenting issues can be seen as the shadows cast by the cracks at our structural foundation. So there's no communication between the father and daughter. He doesn't even feel like he can have the family come in. That was a lot of work to get them to come in. Structurally, changes must occur in the family before an individual's symptoms can be reduced. So we have to look at the family in structural family therapy, obviously. The therapeutic journey guides families like a river seeking a new path, flowing from the turbulent waters of dysfunction to the serene landscape of evolved structures. Here, stability reigns and the harmonious melodies of interdependence are sung, creating a vibrant tapestry of renewed connections and flourishing resilience. So that's, if you can get them into this zone, you're going to be able to do your work a lot better. Let's see here. Chin discusses the concept of joining and mimesis. So joining means you have to meet the family where they are. So if it's a Jewish family, might speak differently than to a Christian family, or to a migrant family that's working in the fields might be different than somebody that's like a Fortune 500 company. It's cultural, all these different ethnic and also different, so many different categories of difference that you have to adapt your framework. That's what we mean. We would need to join the family. Now, mimesis means we have to use the family's language. So that means getting somebody to translate if they don't speak your language. It also means using the way they family talked. In the family sessions, the parents were very formal, kind of rigid, you can imagine, more fundamentalist. The daughter was cussing. So you want to be able to relate to all these people in different ways. That's a complicated aspect of it. Let's move on. Now, the parents, what was going on between the parents? There was a real clash from a Jungian perspective on their typology, where Mike is an ESTJ, that's extroverted thinking, judging. So just get a picture. That's the name for that we would give in the Myers-Briggs language of typology, and John Beebe's language would be, he's the supervisor. Now, the mother is intuitive, feeling, perceiving. So she's almost the exact opposite. Where he's sensation, focusing on the details, she's intuitive. Where he's thinking, she's feeling. That's partly opposites attract. That's why we, but also that they can cause conflicts. Now, why do we focus on typology in the couple? What was I thinking? The reason for doing that is it's not mom versus dad. It's not dad versus mom versus Tammy, or mom on side against dad, and mom and Tammy against dad. Or it's not. We want to avoid blame. So by externalizing the problem as a problem in typology, we're avoiding blame. Now, I do the same thing culturally. For instance, I've worked with a lot of Latino families that have recently immigrated here along the way, and they have a lot of, when they're older, the 15-year-old that's out there in California and Salinas living under that lifestyle, and the grandma who's at home who was raised in, I think this particular family I'm thinking of from Oaxaca. She was raised in a little village in Oaxaca. That's really a different culture. So one way I handle that, especially if I can get a translator, is I draw a line on the blackboard and I say, here's really traditional Oaxacan culture over here. Here's our California teenage culture over here. Where is everybody on the family? So grandma's puts an X over here on the right. Mom is in the middle. Dad is a little bit on grandma's side. Tammy's way over here on the California lifestyle side. So reason why I'm doing that is I'm trying to externalize the problem and define it not as a battle between people, not a battle between grandma and her family, or not. It's grandma's cultural and by talking about cultural specifications and externalizing it, it makes it easier for people to cop to the opposite. I can ask Tammy, is there anything if she's Latina, I could say, is there anything in your culture that grandma, yes, I love her Tres Leches cake. I love this ritual. I love the Day of the Dead. Grandma can see that the daughter does want to maintain her culture. Is there anything good about your daughter learning all about computers or all about this and other thing that grandma's not into? Yes, I want her to be successful in this world. That's where we live. So it's easier to bring them together when you externalize the issue, and it's not between the people. It's something that has got the people. Jung was famous for saying, you don't have complexes, the complexes have you. Or I don't have complexes, the complexes have me. We want to externalize those complexes, and that way we can look at them outside and deal with them. So to avoid blame, that's the key thing in family therapy, avoiding the blame frame. And just to share my countertransference, I had a lot of countertransference. Wow, the dad is really blaming a lot of people. He was in Virginia Satir's technique, which I don't have time to go into every theory we use, but Virginia Satir is the blamer and the placator. That was this couple. She was placating, he was blaming, and those are called emotional stances. Satir, S-A-T-I-R, Virginia. You probably heard about her in family therapy class. Mike's rigidly operates as an ESTJ, rigid and logical. Sally is an INFP, empathetic, conflict avoidant. Practicum tip. Externalize marital complexes using typology to reduce the blame frame in the early sessions. One reason why, for instance, cognitive behavioral therapy does not work a lot in the beginning of a couples thing is because couples usually come in and they're blaming each other already. It's all his problem, it's all her problem, or whatever. They're blaming the other person. So the blame frame comes in. So we want to reduce that tension of blame, and we want to have it put onto a third thing, which is easier to get solidarity for the couple to come together against their type and learn about the other one and understand that in a deeper level. So now we're moving on to Tammy's Intrapsychic formulation here. And this is Heinz Kohlberg's, this is an object relations psychodynamic model by a guy named Heinz Kohlberg, who has this formulation here. And I want to be clear that in this case, in this situation, we're not talking about borderline personality. We're talking about, this is a spectrum here from neurotic to psychotic. And where are you at on this? So there's 4 things in the Otto Kernberg. You can look him up. He has introversion on one side, extroversion on the other side, and then neurotic on the top and psychotic on the bottom. Now, what this means, it doesn't mean borderline personality disorder. This is about object relations. So we always start in the object and we internalize to the self. So for instance, if I have a mother that feeds me and nurtures me, but also abuses me as a baby, I'm going to see that I'm going to have a split object. I'm going to have splitting there that happens. That's the splitting that happens in the object. That means also when I internalize my mother, as babies do in the attachment theory, they internalize that, I have a split. So I'm either perfect or I'm a piece of shit. That's the borderline spectrum there. Is in the middle between neurotic. It's a spectrum. Tammy lacks the integrated sense of self due to early relational failures, like her mom not being consistent and being inconsistent. So her mom was the good mother and the bad mother. What we want to be is the good enough mother. It would be like she utilizes the primitive defense mechanism, like splitting, storing good and bad representations of people separately, leading to rapid emotional polarization from it. So it would be like the self-splitting that Tammy internalized would be like, either I'm perfect or I'm nothing. It'd be like if I said to you, either I'm going to give you the perfect lecture or my lecture is no good at all. That would be because I don't have this, I'm just going to, the idea which everybody should have, you're not going to be a perfect therapist. You're not going to be the worst therapist. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you a good enough lecture. I'm going to give you the information that I think is important from my 40 years of experience. I'm just going to give that out, and it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be mistakes. That's part of integrating that into a whole self. Now, if you have a split in the object, meaning the person that you're connected to, like your mother or in a couple, if you have that splitting happens, you either see good or bad. For instance, Mike, in his split, is what Carl Jung called, and a lot of men have this. I've had so many men that have come in and say, wow, wealthy people, a lot of times, will say things like, wow, this is my 5th marriage. And but now I'm impotent with my wife. And why is that? Because I know it's her fault because I'm fine with my mistress. That's a split. That's what we call the mother whore complex. It's a split in the object of the anima of the male. Same thing, it has a different name, but it would be the same thing for a woman. So the mother is either the perfect Madonna, not Madonna the singer, Madonna the Virgin Mary, perfect, or Mary Magdalene in his mind. It's either one or the other. That's how he sees women. So when his wife has Tammy, that he starts to lose the sexuality. Now that's all repressed and it's getting projected onto Tammy. That's more than you need to know about this. But what it causes in the daughter is this fragmented sense of self. Am I the good girl that daddy loves? Am I a bad girl? Or I like these guys? What do I do? That's the thing she's caught in. It's a complex web here. The Bowen, the multi-generational family therapy. You off computers, you can set this from Bowen's point of view. We have a triangulation here that's going on. And it's very easy to see the triangle. Mike and Sally are having trouble. They're not connecting. Tammy is the identified patient. You can see how things are moving along in that framework. And the family's anxiety created a toxic triangle. Tammy focused with her father's fuse. Tammy fused. Bowen's term is fused. Now, what Bowen calls fusion, that's what Minuchin calls enmeshment in the circumplex model. Enmeshment and fusion are very similar. I want to explain what the difference is. Minuchin, he doesn't really think, his philosophy is, all you have to do is change how the family moves interpersonally. You don't have to worry about what's going on in their soul or in their psychology. So enmeshment is purely outer. It's that they're enmeshed. They're in each other's business, but it has nothing to do with their thinking. But fusion to Bowen means fusion of thoughts and feelings. So Tammy can't tell what's her thought and everybody else's thought. The way to visualize this is I visualize it as like a stone soup. Throw in a stone. Tammy throws in sexuality. Mom throws in, I'm worried that I'm breaking away from my husband. I can't stand this. I'm oppressed. Dad throws in all this anxiety. Well, I might reach into this soup and I might pick up anxiety. I might pick up the feelings from Tammy. It's all fused in this soup. That's called, in Bowen's term, that's called the undifferentiated ego mass, which is a really interesting thing to go into. Tammy became the identified patient, also termed the scapegoat, to maintain the family's homeostatic balance. So mom and dad get to cool off the heat, the problems that are conflict that's going on there, because they're all focused on Tammy. And so many times when the parents, I always tell people, my best child and adolescent successful cases turn into couples cases, because there's a conflict between the parents of some type, and the kid gets triangulated in, and the kid starts smoking weed, or gets pregnant, or the kid has these problems, but all of a sudden it takes the pressure off of the parents, and we got to stick together, and the kids will sacrifice themselves to keep their parents together. And even after they divorce, many children have this vision, I hope my parents get back together. Now, sometimes you'll get kids say, what a relief they're not together. Depends whether they were hot or cold. Sally and Mike were cold. They didn't argue a lot. They were just getting numb and cold, which again caused problems for Tammy. Utilize genograms and circular questioning to map family triangles and make the implicit scapegoating process explicit. So we want to bring it out in the open. We want to turn the mirror on the family. Circular, you know what a genogram is. That's the little family chart I showed you in the very first slide. Circular questioning is saying, Tammy, what do you see going on between your mom and your dad? Mike, what do you think is going on between Sally and Tammy? Sally, what do you see going on between So you're doing that partly to define the problem as a systems problem, to get the heat of this circle off of Tammy as the bad guy. I want to break that chain that's holding her. And she's fused in her thoughts and her feelings. She doesn't know what to think. She has emotions towards these other youth at school or whatever, and is falling in love, having issues like that every 16-year-old has. But she can't think and say, I'm separate from my parents. It's all fused together. So that's that. So let's move that out of the way. Thank you. The trickster archetype. Now, Tammy comes to session, and she looks totally different. She's a sweet little girl on one week, and the next week she comes, and she's full emo. As the system's chaos peaked, as the stress in the family, the anxiety in the family increased, Tammy became pregnant and adopted an emo personality. By embodying the trickster, she actively critiques the family's moral disengagement and authoritative wisdom. Tammy is the trickster in this particular situation. So continuing about Tammy, after coming to 3 months of individual sessions, Tammy appeared for her usual therapy time, and she had become emo overnight. As an emo girl, Tammy dressed in emo fashion, meaning she dyed her hair black and cut it very asymmetrically, with one side of her bangs hanging over the left eye, and different colored stripes in her hair, blue and silver. She wore a large black belt with silver studs in it. And she said, I want to get your help so my dad will let me get a lip piercing. She's pushing boundaries as a trickster. I noticed you're changing fashion, I said. I want to know more about it, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get your dad to let you get piercing on your face or lip. I want my outside to show who I am on the inside. My dad thinks I'm no good for nothing, and I want to show him by how I look. Oh, I see you've changed your look on the outside. I wonder if that says about what's happening to you on the inside. And she says, I feel pissed off and I'm restless. I have worries about the future and what's going to happen with the entire damn fucking world, especially me and my stupid family where my parents do not get along. They hate me. Do you feel like an outcast in your own family? You don't think you belong? No shit, Sherlock, she says. That's a really tough position to be in, and I hope we can figure that out. And so I asked her to play me a song that just represented how she felt. And she sang this song, which is from My Chemical Romance. It's called I'm Not Okay, which really told the whole story. And the song says, we sang this together 3 or 4 times, and that really seemed to calm her down. Well, if you wanted honesty, all you had to say, I never want to let you down or have you go. It's better off that way. For all the dirty looks, the photographs your boyfriend took, remember you broke your foot from jumping out the second floor. I'm not okay. You wear me out. What will it take to show that it's not the life it seems? I'm not okay. It never ceases to amaze me how troubled youth can use music to express their emotion. Now, my primary concern in this whole shift was to assess her suicide risk. The song was sad and her changing behavior was troubling. I now needed to assess if this indicated that she was clinically depressed or suicidal, and it took the rest of the session to do that. I was also worried about how our father would respond to this change in appearance. After the session, while writing my notes, I realized that I would need to contact her by telephone to ensure she felt safe throughout the week. I also noticed that Tammy was troubled and was beginning to integrate her shadow side, which was a hopeful sign for me as a Jungian, that she was starting to integrate her shadow side and own it. So let's move on here. So the whitening, if you notice, we've moved from the grado, the darkening, to the whitening. The sequence of therapy, entering the darkness of the vampire's dream. Tammy experienced a profound nightmare, marrying a vampire with red eyes at an altar officiated by a minister who looked like her father. Wow. So that tells you a lot just in that sentence. The vampire has no reflection, which is interesting that vampires don't have any reflection and they suck blood. And Tammy hadn't really got a lot of mirroring in her babyhood because of what the depression and things that her mother was going through at the time. She comes in to this session with the vampire. She says, Brian, I've been having some really fucked up dreams lately. Tell me the dream in as much detail as you can. I am walking through a dark forest. I came to a clearing with green grass. In the clearing, I see a minister preparing for a wedding. At this point, I know I will be the bride. I look down and I see that I am wearing a white dress with a veil covering my face. I walk up to the altar. The minister resembles my father. The groom is standing there, and I look into his eyes, which are dark red. I see teeth, revealing that he is a vampire. I'm overwhelmed with hate and loathing for this monster. My therapist stands next to him, holding out a mirror, allowing me to see that the vampire has no reflection. So my stomach turns. I feel like I'm going to throw up, and I awaken with a cold sweat. That's the end of the dream. What kind of things pop into your mind when you think about that dream? I'm asking for associations. Well, I do believe that with all this shit going on, people jumping on my cage, I feel like my blood is being sucked. If a part of you were the vampire, what part would that be? Right now, I do have a being inside of me sucking my blood. And she's talking about the baby. And I hate all those people getting on my case and stealing my energy. How does you in the dream feel about yourself? In Jungian psychology, that question is about the dream ego. The dream ego is the person in the dream. I feel sad. I'm lost in a dark forest. I can't find my way out. I feel trapped, which reminds me of my mother. My inner voice told me that Tammy is lost in her life. The dark forest represents the danger and inability to see what she is experiencing. In the forest, you have no depth perception. You can't see. Anyway, Therefore, you cannot see any distance. When you can't see where you're going, you are lost. This inability to see creates a sense of being enclosed and walled off, unable to target your direction. She has lost her orientation on the journey. A year ago, she was making a beeline for a fantastic college. Now she was sidetracked and unable to get her bearings. I was experiencing a lot of countertransference for this youth that had lost their trajectory and life path during that. So let's move on here to the next. That was an interesting dream. Clinical intervention is dream work and active imagination. After dreaming about the vampire we discussed earlier in the last slide, I had Tammy practice box breathing for a few minutes and encouraged her to focus on releasing all the tension in her body. She was able to enter into a light trance. And you don't want an active imagination too deep of a trance state where the person goes to sleep or can't hear. You want them to be able to interact with the images. So I said, imagine the vampire is there and you're not afraid. You feel strong and confident. You ask the vampire what he's trying to teach or show you. And she says, hey, you asshole vampire, what are you trying to teach me? What do you want me to learn? And then he said he wants me to have power, have eternal life, and stand up to the bullies and people who are trying to mess with me and control my life. He wants me to learn how to stop the bitches from bullying me and unleash the blood of my strength and life force. That really caught me by surprise. But what I say is, ask him to go on and tell you more. And she is silent for a while in between these. And she says, the vampire was like, I need you to be able to stand up for yourself and be fierce when you need to, so you can chase your dreams. I want you to learn how to share strength and love with your kid and protect them. And however you can be, I want you to have a future where you are in charge of your own life. So this actually ties a lot in. I have other videos about internal family systems. This is a part of her. The vampire is not a bad, evil person. It's actually a protector that's being the vampire to actually try to help her. So she was able to internalize that from the dream work and the active imagination. Practicum tip. In active imagination, the therapist must allow the psychic processes to unfold without interference from the conscious mind. And the revelation is the vampire didn't want to drain her, he wanted to give her power and stand up to bullies and protect her child's future. The fusional complex, differentiating from the family system. Tammy struggled with the fusional complex, the pressure to conform to her family's thought process. She had to conform. She was fused. So this is the centrinitas, the yellowing. She's starting to make some real movement. Therapy utilized music to help her articulate feelings of being trapped behind a wall and blamed by the system, and that she's not okay. We use more music therapy. Sophia's birth. This is, we see where we moved into the reddening. So the birth of Sophia, that's also a very interesting issue to talk about. So Tammy is allowing herself to become more her own person. In the previous stage, she feels pressure to follow her family's processes and cultural specifications of how she's supposed to be as a young woman. So this is about maybe a month after Sophia's birth where she's entering into the redness. Tammy came into my office, sat down, and said, I had a dream which is bothering me. My ears perked up. I was, okay, I'm happy to discuss that with you. Tell me about your dream. Tammy picked at her purple cuticle. She was picking her nails. She's got a little nervous. I don't know where to start. It has got me thinking about my life and where it needs to go. This is when we're getting to the reddening. She's moving on her path towards individuation. Go on. And Sophia, I picked Sophia up, the daughter, the baby. And so I was holding the baby, and she says, I held Sophia in my arms. And this is the dream she had. I held Sophia in my arms at a park near my house. I felt the joy of looking into her little eyes. I looked up and I saw several zombies lumbering toward me like mummies. They were grotesque. They had twisted faces, and they were all dead inside. Their eyes were glazed over. I could smell their stench, and I knew that some terrible disease had infected them. I realized that if they touched me, I would surely become infected and pass it on to Sophia. So already I'm thinking in this dream, she's putting herself in this role of the mother. She really is changing. She went on. I knew that they wanted to eat Sophia's brain because she was so pure. She had not been hurt by people. She had not been betrayed yet. I felt like when I touched the baby and held her against my chest, skin to skin, I could protect her. And so I grabbed her, and she grabbed her in the dream and held her. They did not speak. The zombies did not speak. It was as if they could not find words. They were so mindless, moving forward as if trying to get us. So I ran to escape. They behaved like a swarm, trying to surround me, but they did not communicate. They made it ever scarier. That made the fact that they weren't communicating with her. There was no correlation. There was no humanness there, which is part of our spirit we have in our culture right now. We've transitioned from vampire to zombie. My inner voice told me, as the therapist, that this was mighty and I needed to calm down Tammy's arousal level so it could re experience the nightmare. Usually I prefer to go with feelings, but she looked so distraught at the thought of possibly losing her baby that I realized that it was better to focus on emotional regulation at this stage. So I softened my tone. That was a nightmare. She just hold on to Sophia, and I gave her Sophia back, and look into her eyes and do some box breathing. And she looked at the baby's eyes. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. I repeated this 3 times. Then I noticed her breathing had changed and she became relaxed. So I said, "What are your associations?" She tilted her head, scratched her chin, and said, "Association." So I realized I was being too complicated. What do you think as you remember that dream? What pops into your head? That was a little mistake I made, but she was so into the baby and had made so many changes, and we had built such a trust. I got a pass on that one. She rubbed her shoulders like she was cold. I like going to that park with Sophia to get out of the house, especially when mom and dad are arguing. So she's telling me and confirming and starting to understand her family of origin. Securing attachment. We want to work on mentalization. Mentalization is the theory of mind, realizing other people have a different mind. We learn that as little children. The first time when a children points at something, that's because they realize that you have a different mind than them. Through revisualization, Tammy faced the zombies. To secure her attachment to Sophia, she had to develop a reflective function, mentalization. So you see the little figure of the mother's mind shifting to the child's mind, the independent psychological state, reciprocal recognition. The baby is wet. The mother notices over and over. The baby cries. The mother picks her up and responds. This is a weaving pattern back and forth. Recognizing Sophia has an independent mind allowed Tammy to transition to her own authentic self. Now, it's Fongey, Fongey, is the work on mentalization. It's a whole style of therapy, but it's all about co regulation and helping people realize that other people have a mind different than them and that their thoughts and other people are different, and how to listen and how to be reflective to people, which is really important for a mother to have. The final enactment, a healing therapeutic container. So we finally got to a point after working with the couple, working with the family, that we got to this point of the container. So we gathered in a circle. I didn't want anybody to be aligned with anyone else or to be above anyone else. And that's why we sat in a circle. So the parents weren't, everybody had their own chair. This was the time of closure, I said, because we have worked so hard over the past several years and dealt with a lot of pain and suffering. But we also have wonderful joy now in our lives and a sense of family is moving on and have gotten what they needed from therapy. This is the time in your ritual to help symbolize the closure of therapy and what you have learned and gained from this experience. I know that you have become much closer with each other. Mike, would you, as the father, be willing to go first in the family? So, what I have depicted here is he talks to Tammy, which was the part of this presentation, but I'm going to give you a little bit more depth. First thing he did is he knelt in front of Sally, his wife, and Sally started immediately to tear up. Mike's voice cracked as he said, "I love you more than anything in the world, and I have been an ass so many times to you. I have looked at other women. I have not respected you. I know that I'm going to change all that and realize that I can't live without you. I realize I can't live without you. I need you in my life, and I always want you to be there. I love you. I want to glorify you, and can we move on? I promise to listen to your advice. I need you, and you have saved my life many times. Please forgive me. Sally looked straight at Mike. I forgive you, and we have truly started to come together, and I love you. You have been the rock in my life, and you are so strong and take care of everything. I need to become stronger myself. I need to live my own life and have my own way of doing things. I finally feel like you will be behind me as I embark on this journey of finding my true self. But I want you to know we will be together forever. I don't think I can live without you either. Then we have this crucial scene here of Tammy's life. Mike knelt in front of Tammy. Tammy blushed. Tammy, I have projected many things onto you that I've pushed down. I want you to know how proud I am to be your father. You have dealt with a lot, and you have done it with great strength. I want to be a better father to you. I want to be there when you need me. You have made me a grandfather, and I'm so thankful for that. Never think that I look down on you. I just wanted to put you first in the things I do, along with my granddaughter. I want to start to put you first. That was a change. I had difficulty letting you grow up because I didn't want to lose you. I hope you forgive me. I will be your father forever, and you will be my daughter. Nothing can change that. I already love Sophia with all my heart. Thank you for bringing her into my life. And Tammy said, Dad, you try so hard. I want you to know how much I've seen you change over the past several months and how happy I am that you are closer to Mom and we are together as a family. You let me grow up, and I'm also sorry about the things I did, but I will get to that in a minute. I accept your love and admit how much you have changed over the past month. I'm so happy to have a daughter, and I'm happy you are Sophia's granddad. So that's a final story, and it's important to know that, of course, that was a successful story, and it took a lot of work. It took about 5 years of work in different angles to get there. There was a whole family involved, and it was a very complex system to work through. Hopefully, that long presentation will be clear to you and help you give an idea about how to deal with families in the future. So, this is Dr. Brian Lippincott signing off, and thank you very much.